Tina Clarke has recently joined our Minnesota chapter of Climate Reality. And Tina has worked professionally on climate, environmental health, and justice issues and policy advocacy for over 30 years. She's worked across the country and globally for environmental groups and led citizen action for Greenpeace USA. Al Gore funded a project she did for Bill McKibben and 350.org. So she's a real player. Tina was the lead trainer for the Global Transition and Community Resilience Movement, helping lead communities to build resilience and to transition away from fossil fuels. We asked her to speak this evening about the globally leading sustainable models she learned about while working for 4 years in Denmark. So, Tina, take it away.
Thanks, Anna. It's a real pleasure to be with you all tonight. I know you all are similar in that it's always terrible to be introduced because it's sort of, those kind of lofty things we say about each other. But I see you all as colleagues, and I'm really happy to be here tonight because it's fun to share some of the wonderful things I saw while working in Denmark. And it's also, it feels like an opportunity for us to think together to begin more conversation about what we might do together here in Minnesota. One of the things that the Danes are very focused on is collaboration. And when I first arrived there and people kept saying, we help each other, we collaborate, I thought, yeah, everybody says that. The longer I was there, the more I saw how fundamental it is to their success. And while countries have so many demographic, geographical, economic, historical, et cetera, differences, one thing that stuck with me is how powerfully people can move their neighborhood, their community, their municipality, even their region and country when they collaborate with others. And that fit with what I experienced working in Washington, D.C. for 7 years, where we always felt that we didn't have much power. And yet I saw that every once in a while you could win, half to 3/4 of a victory. It was more rare than you wished, but often simply being there prevented things from getting worse. And I sometimes think about our current situation in this country as all of us kind of thinking that the 70s, the 60s and 70s sort of put these environmental laws in place, and now we can sit back and don't have to worry about it. And I know all of you on this call share my feeling of the urgency of action around climate in particular, but also to really retake our democracy, and how after all these years of so much going in ways that can concentrate power, it is a huge challenge. But Denmark is inspiring at how they doggedly pursue their big goals. And when I was there for 4 years, from 2017 to 2020, there were a bunch of conversations happening. And when I went back to put together some information for this show for you guys, I was really impressed to see how much progress they'd made in their conversations and their deliberate movements and inclusive discussions. So they bring together industry and all levels of government and all kinds of citizen and business and labor organizations. And it's really inspiring to see how those deliberate conversations over a period of time in a territory about the size of Minnesota, with about Minnesota's population, could actually achieve quite a bit. So I'll jump into it. I'm gonna talk only about a few examples tonight because there were just so many. We can't be here for the next 48 hours. So I thought I'd just pick on some of the highlights of things that are always signature leadership in Denmark. So wind is one, their wind power and their energy system, their bicycle networks and the bicycling in their cities and rural areas, They just passed a new food policy last year that's pioneering for the world, and there's some very practical on the ground models. One of them out called Too Good to Go, which deals with waste food. And then, if we have a little bit of time at the end, I thought we could talk together about models that you've seen, especially at the state or municipal local level, that are inspiring. And hopefully we can continue the conversation. So I will just, let's see, for some reason, there we go. I know you all are with me, but I just wanted to lay the background for all of us at this time, and also, I'm just gonna reduce my screen here, and also the perspective that the Danes use as the foundation of their conversations. So we know that the warming and the measurements of average temperature increases are off the charts, that they're way beyond the models, and that many scientists are panicking. And we're seeing that these extreme disasters that were not at all expected within our lifetimes and beyond are happening with increasing frequency and severity. And as you all may know, the UN chief Antonio Guterres has been quite a powerful spokesperson on this, and he's not underestimating based on the science that I'm sure you're reading that I follow. This was a nice summary that I saw recently in a TED Talk, and it's a scientist named Jonathan, I'm going to blank his name, but he talks about how when you look at all the options, the solutions, the 96% of what we have to do is cut fossil fuels. And all of the focus on technology, this little area down here, carbon removal, he said, and this is consistent with what I've seen, really the technologies are not there. Safe nuclear power is not there. The next generation of these small nuclear reactors is not there. We don't have the carbon capture sequestration technologies in place in a way that's reliable. And really the way we're going to be able to prevent the runaway climate disasters that would get much worse than we are already in is if we can achieve the efficiencies and cut fossil fuel use. And the phrase that the scientist is saying that he and his colleagues discuss is now is more important than new technologies, that we don't have time to wait until some of these things can be proven. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the proven things that have really worked in Denmark and that they are leaning into, that they're really emphasizing. And the backdrop for this is, these priorities for solving or reducing the severity of this climate crisis. Again, you all know this stuff well, but safe, clean, affordable, truly renewable energy storage in batteries, that we don't need we don't need the gas-fired plants, we don't need coal plants, we don't need nuclear power, we don't need to have any kind of burning. We need to use all the different kinds of batteries, and there are just so many different ones now that are available and are rapidly dropping in price. Very, very exciting. Very low carbon technology for transportation, regional food security to decrease our dependency. We saw that during COVID, that we may not be switching to all local food, but we should be able to supply ourselves with all the essentials for several months or year or two at a time. Circular economies, that's big in Denmark, where the waste products of one industry are the inputs for another, and yet keeping an eye on low toxin and recyclable materials, as well as ecosystem protection and generation. Denmark, this is a climate change performance index that rates all the countries in the world, and Denmark has had the highest rank in this index for most of the previous years. You can see the US is red, very low, and China, actually about 40% of China's emissions really belong on our chart because of all the stuff we buy from them. So we really have to add that to our accounting. Denmark is up here in green, along with Two of the other Scandinavian countries. Finland actually is doing some great stuff as well. Estonia has a lot of forests, so that helps their ranking. Scotland has been a real pioneer leader. And this is the Netherlands. They're also really advanced in their work. And then some of the lower income countries, they just have a smaller per capita use. So among the highly industrialized, high consumption countries, Northern Europe, with Germany doing a lot of good work as well, are really the leading ones. And this ranking has not been able to give out the first, second, or third place to any country yet. It's Denmark comes in first, but in fourth place. I just wanted to. This is a boring slide, but I'll just want you to see the facts here. They're not just going down to 2007 levels like the United States and a lot of other countries' municipalities. They're setting their goals all the way back to 1990. And when I was there, and just before I left because of COVID, the debate was between a 70% reduction goal or an 80% reduction goal. And it was a huge deal that there was a very significant part of the electorate, of the parliamentarians and the voters that wanted 80%. And it was a bitter loss for them that the government wimped out and only did 70%. Of course, this is, the best goal in the world, but Denmark wants to be the sustainability leader, and they said they are now saying as well, reaffirming that we will work together to create the new technologies, and this collaboration thing. It's very interesting to watch how they do that, and part of why they can collaborate with industry like Maersk, the global shipping giant, and get them to become a leader in shipping, in decarbonizing their shipping, which they are working, making a lot of progress towards, is that they have such a democratic, small d, participatory government. And we can talk more about this if you want, but companies can't get away with a lot of what happens in this country because the whole country is so well organized. 90% over 90%. I heard 95% from one person before I left, but I'm not sure what it is now exactly, but I know it's over 90% is unionized. So if any wealthy company tries to get away with ripping off the citizenry or getting a tax law passed, everybody knows about it and it becomes a big deal. So that's a real interesting example of how even when people don't personally want to change their lifestyles, because Danes fly all over the world, they consume a lot. There's a lot of conversation in Denmark about what a heavy consumption society they actually are and how fake it is for them to claim to be sustainability leaders when their citizens are flying all over the world all the time. They really are holding themselves accountable, but at least they have the conversation going, and there is a high degree of accountability for government, and they expect government to make it easier for them to do the right thing. Their goal is 100% renewable energy production, and they have been on the forefront of wind power since way back, since Reagan came in and shut down the Department of Energy and actually met the director of the wind energy research program for Jim Carter, and he told me that they lost 85% on the first budget that the Reagan administration put into effect, and he said in the second year they'll eliminate this completely. He said we're giving the plans away to all these countries, and he mentioned Denmark and Spain, which are the two wind power leaders. So the abundant wind on the North Sea and the Baltic, Denmark's a very windy country, and they have over 700 miles of they have over 700 islands. So they're really banking on their wind power. They built the first offshore wind farm in 1991. In 1997, oops, I was going to take you back there. They did an energy island called Samsu, which produces more renewable energy than it needs, and that's been the case um, for over 20 years now. The residents have owned the energy and benefited financially, although I just found an article saying that the original turbines from 1999, they couldn't get parts because the technology has changed so much. And so many of the residents decided to sell their shares in the wind turbines to a larger company that will better maintain the turbines and they can finance themselves. Is very interesting. But it goes to show how, communities can really leverage resources when they see the direct economic benefit. And there's all these stories from Samsung, because I met the guy who runs their training program. Um, there are all these stories of people who really don't care for wind or even dislike wind, but when they found they'd make money off of it, then they were very interested. And that's what sold it way back over 25 years ago. Now, Denmark has embarked on this very ambitious idea of energy islands. They're going to build two large offshore wind energy facilities, and they're calling them islands because they're going to concentrate power. I'll show you a diagram in a moment, but the goals are to generate a lot more renewable energy, and wind energy is the cheapest. It's also it's really the least environmentally damaging of all. I mean, there's certain kinds of small hydro projects in certain areas that are not very damaging, although it depends on who you talk to. But really, wind is our least impact form of energy. And they want, since the Ukraine war, they've really doubled down on building. Actually, they've quadrupled their commitment to building wind turbines to help Europe get off of their dependency on Russian oil and gas. Because the whole European continent, as many of you may know, took a big economic hit when they began the embargo. So what they're doing is they're building this island that's going to have hundreds of turbines, and they'll collect power generated and funnel it into a central hub, which will then be sent to the north coast of northern Europe. I'm sorry, the northern European countries of Belgium and the Netherlands and Luxembourg and Germany, especially. And they'll also take some back for their own country. These two major islands of Denmark, Jutland and Zealand. These islands are going to function as a place to centralize all the power and then distribute it. And it's going to be another famous Danish public-private partnership. So the idea, and this is very Danish, we're going to share Denmark's green energy resources because these are waters for Denmark with the rest of Europe. So yes, they'll make money off of it, but they funneling all that electricity and then inviting every big AI company in the world to come there. Love to headquarter in Denmark, and it's got a lot of, environmentally energy and practices. So companies love to come and talk about their sustainability in Denmark. But Denmark is going to turn around and give it all back to their neighbors as well. So it's that result. Now, this is something that actually people have been very proud of. The waste industry is very proud of it. It's a waste to energy facility that they turned into a ski slope. There's an architectural designed by a very famous Danish architect, and people really do go and ski there. And it really is a place that is not as hazardous as you might think, because I talked to a parliamentarian who knew all about it, because he and a bunch of others in the Green Party want to shut all waste to energy facilities down, which is actually a good thing to do, but this is very, very low toxic. Because I worked for Clean Water Action for a while and also for Greenpeace, and we were always going after incinerators for the the very toxic chemical releases that are damaging to health and the environment. But these guys, every question I had for them, oh no, they had a scrubber for that. They had sorted that, toxin out. They've really, really done a good job. So as clean as you can make an incinerator, they've done it. And so the air is actually quite decent around there, as good as anywhere, pretty much. However, you still don't want to be burning plastic for a lot of reasons. And there still are these really tiny quantities of toxins that get in the environment and bioaccumulate in our bodies. So this is an example of how they're not perfectionists. They do want to get the job done. They want practical results. And so they do sometimes do less than is best practice. And they have big debates about it. People in Denmark do not think that they should be bragging so much because they think that there's still a long way to go, which is very humble of them, I think. Okay, I want to also talk a bit about one of my favorite technologies. Some of you may have heard of vehicle to grid or vehicle to everything, where your car battery becomes a part of the storage of electricity that can power your home, can put electricity back on the power grid when it's needed, can also store electricity for when the sun is out or when there's a power outage. So this vehicle to grid technology uses what's called bidirectional charging. The electricity can run either way. So either in plugging your car in, you can pull electricity from the grid or from your solar panels like I do, or you could use the battery in your vehicle to power your house or put electricity back on the grid. And this is how we will avoid a crisis, a crash around the demand of electric vehicles. Some of you may have read articles about that some people are saying we can't go to electric vehicles as fast as everybody says we have to because we can't do it on the power grid. Well, it turns out that Europe has been working on this for quite a while. And I'm going to go back here a minute. So this idea of vehicle to grid technology was very publicly embraced by the city of Utrecht, which is one of the largest cities just south of Amsterdam in Holland. And they've now got hundreds of charging stations. Many of the stations have this bi-directional. They don't just charge up the cars. This is a picture from an organization called We Drive Solar, and I want to show you the guy who invented this. You can go see his TED Talk. His name is Robin Berg, and I'm sorry I put Peter Berg here because I know Peter Berg. I just did this last night. And this is Peter Berg, an engineer, and you can find his TED Talk from 2012 where he talks about creating a microgrid. Well, this is the king of the Netherlands, like Denmark. The Netherlands still has their kind of, just like England, they have their royal family. Although these guys tend to be in Denmark and the Netherlands, they're very, very casual. Like everybody knows them, And this other guy is the head of Renault for Northern Europe, and they are officially launched the first bi-directional charging system. That's back in 2019. So this is the concept that Robin Berg has been promoting, is that the car can be a neighborhood battery where you can be driving it or you can be plugging it in and providing power for your neighborhood. So Europe has about 50 to 70 million EVs probably going to be on the road by 2030. And that's going to require, several million new charging. And the idea is that if you could have about somewhere between 12 and 40% of the chargers, there's a lot of debate, but somewhere between 10 to 40% of the chargers being bidirectional, that you can power the car or the car can power the grid or a house, or would be enough to handle all of these electric vehicles. That's pretty astonishing that this one little technology could address the issue of electric vehicles coming onto the grid. I want just for kicks, I wanted to show you that Finland has just come out this month, a week ago, with at a big auto show where the battery, the motor for the motorcycle is actually in the wheels. And this has been something under development for a bunch of years, but they're saying they've got their best yet. Um, and this is from some of you may know Verge Motorcycles if you're into that. Okay. Um, Now I'm going to switch since I'm probably going. Oh, I'm already over time. So let me just do a couple things real quick. Um, Denmark also has lots and lots of grassroots, bottom up kinds of ideas. And this one's called Green Kayak. And people can borrow a kayak for free and go out and pick up trash. They've had more than 60,000 people collect trash around the city of Copenhagen. That's the kind of by making sustainability fun, they they get all kinds of people involved and they make it hip and cool, and it's really being led by young people in many ways. All right, I think I'm out of time, so I need to check in with you guys. Do you want me to keep going or shall we stop now?
I think you should keep going.
All
This is
right.
fascinating.
Okay. Well,
I
so
might
then,
have to I might have to dodge out, but I will listen to the show afterwards. Okay, so keep going. All right.
okay. All right.
Thanks.
So many of you heard about Denmark and the Netherlands and their famous bicycling routes. When I was there, they were just unveiling a plan to take major superhighways out from the city of Copenhagen. And this was how they figured out where to put on the right, you'll see this map with all the red dots and the little S's. The S's are all of the train stops for the Copenhagen Metropolitan Rail System. And and the red is a heat map of all the activity that's going on and where people live and work and go to school and recreate. And so you can see that there are these towns on the coast where they've got train lines. I actually took one all the way out to here. It's just the most charming little two-piece train. But they decided that they also wanted to extend bicycling routes. So you can't really see this here, but the the orange the orange lines are ones that are in existence. The yellow ones are ones that are currently being built. Actually, this is about a year old. And the gray ones are planned. And these are these huge cycling routes. You can see, here's another better, these black ones here are brand new that they're going in now. And there's just I could spend 3 hours talking about this, and I have a zillion pictures. Um, that it's just absolutely amazing. You see 70 and 80-year-olds bicycling with the young people at full speed in the city. You see older people bicycling, and the stories I was told about how the Danes got through World War II in part because everybody knew how to bicycle. The older generations had always bicycled. And so many of the people who were children then are still bicycling today. They have many features, and I've got a little graphic from their Office of Super Bicycle Superhighways or Cycle Superhighways um, that I'll show you. So they're regional cycling superhighways. They found that the economic benefits were about $500 million more than what it costs to build. Now they're adding in the health benefits, the fewer asthma attacks, the exercise people get, the lower mortality and illness rate, the parking, the roadways they don't need to expand. It's just they could. It's really phenomenal how this investment has paid off. And their plan is to have 29 more routes. So when you go to these countries, it's easy to say, "Oh, they've always been like this," but it's not true. There was bicycling, but there weren't the scale of bicycling now, where and the collaboration. I mean, one of the people I talked to said that getting the 30 municipalities just in the island of Zealand to cooperate on the bicycle routes reminded him of Game of Thrones, the politics. He said there was no sex, but there was lots of crazy politics because they're not all liberal. There's a lot of conservatives in their rural area as well. And one of the big global climate deniers is from Denmark. So this was not an easy thing to do, but they just persisted at it. Here's some of the features. They'll build a whole new road and make the sidewalk separate so it's really clear and the bicyclists don't have to worry about hitting people. They'll expand existing roads. They'll take urban streets and make them dedicated lanes and put in special signals. They have smoothed over, so when roads come in from the side, they take care of sidewalks as well as the bicycle routes, so that they're concerned about mobility for everybody. So people in wheelchairs get around very easily in Denmark. They create separate landing places. If any of you've ever tried to get off a bus on a bicycle route, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. And so they have really protected people. And you can see the ridges they have between pedestrian, bicycle, pedestrian again, and then the road where buses are. And these barriers, you'll see them in all kinds of places. This is actually a footrest. This is extremely inexpensive, but very, very popular. You'll go to a stoplight in a major intersection, and in Copenhagen, you'll see all these, fast bicyclists leaning up against here. They have repair stations. They have these kiosks now that tell you what the temperature is. This is, of course, in centigrade. And also they count the number of people. And they said this has actually been an interesting they found out through some research that people liked feeling that they were part of this big bicycling movement, and so they give people feedback. This here, you can't see it, but they have special green electric bicycles. Oh, here, you can see it here, and it tells you how many seconds you have to get across. So if you're zooming through and you see your little green, head in the intersection, you can see the little green bicycle. And then you see, oh, I've got 15 seconds. You can just keep your pace going and get right through. Just like when we see a yellow light, and we're close to entering, we could just truck on through. They have this whole thing where a certain speed will get going, and everybody who can keep up with the speed, they will adjust the stoplights so that the train of bicyclists can keep going until there's a smaller number of bicyclists, but if there's a big long line of them. And so people have learned that, so they'll group together so they can keep biking just for us miles and miles through the city. It makes it so fast to bicycle. And this is part of why Denmark has these 48% of all the trips in Copenhagen are by bike, because they have worked out so many ways to give people, directional signs, lighting in the pathway, in tunnels, specialized tunnels, bridges, that it makes it so convenient. And when they've done research on this, actually, I'm just going to keep going, they found that, like, I was in Birkerud up here, and it would take me about 20 minutes to get into the center. This is the central train station here in Copenhagen. Here's the main Copenhagen station. And so this is, of course, this little part of Zealand where Copenhagen is right here. So what they found is that the average trip length for bicyclists and for people taking the train was about 12 kilometers, and people driving, actually, although not as many drive. So they found this research that it's about 12 miles. They found that their bicyclists on average were doing 11 miles. Now you would think, why would people switch from the train? If it takes me, 20 minutes to get all the way into Copenhagen station, But you think about somebody who's like out here in Lyngby, which is a major university, that's like a 12-minute bike ride. And it's a 12-minute train ride. So why would they, I mean, sorry, it can be longer depending upon, and what they found is that people, many of them, especially like families, that they loved their biking time, that the bicycle system is so well set up that they saw the transport time of bicycling as me time, where they decompressed from work. They thought about, something they needed to work out. And so they would take care of their families. They'd have time for themselves to get exercise, which they otherwise would never get. And then they'd be coming home. And it was just fascinating to see that they thought it was easier and better and made their lives higher quality to bicycle. Now, the trains also take bicycles, and the trains are just so phenomenal. It's sad for me sometimes to ride around here. And, if you just get more people riding the trains become fantastic. It wasn't that we didn't have a homeless person on the train or somebody playing their music too loud or somebody who had just, smoked something. It's just that there were so many of the rest of us. And because there were police on all of them, but they were coming around checking and helping everyone out. And there's just a whole attitude like, this is our transportation. This is what makes our lives great and easier. I'm not going to go into all of this because I'm way over time. So I'll just mention this first in the world tax on livestock emissions. We've all talked about how severe this problem is. Well, Denmark's the first country to figure out a way to get the agribusiness, and they're the largest pork producer in Europe, although now a lot is being taken up and a lot of their processors are in Poland and some of the Eastern European countries. But they have this massive love affair with meat in Denmark. And they have a lot of small farms, modest farms, and then big business producing pork and all kinds of other livestock. And they got this agreement because they're returning a good portion of the tax funds to the agricultural industry to make the transition to low emissions operations. And that's a huge, huge challenge for them. They're also going to restore forests. They're going to get up to the 20% minimum. The Global Convention on Biodiversity says we need to get 30% of agricultural lands back into protected status. And so they're really doing their part. Okay, and then finally, I'll just mention this real quick. This practical project. Food waste is so huge for emissions. Some people say that it's much higher than we even have counted, and that but this project doesn't go into all the doom and gloom about how terrible you are that you are wasting food or that you are throwing away perfectly good food. It instead is completely practical. So what they've done is they've contacted all these different restaurants. This is now an international movement. In fact, I saw we have one in Minneapolis now, which I didn't check several years ago, and we now have one here. I got to find out who's participating. But basically, they go around, they collect food, and they then redistribute it. So worldwide, about 40% of food produced is wasted, either in the field, people throw it out of their fridge, and everything in between. And the cost is unbelievably high, 10% potentially, not to mention the land use, 30% of our agricultural land and 20% of fresh water use globally. This is from their website. And so what they do is they collect the food from the businesses that's about to go bad. They package it up in a variety of ways. They market it and they get it out to people. And it's so easy to participate. And then they work with grocery stores and producers to help them market their products in store. And I saw some of their early experiments when I was there, 2017 to 2020. And it's anyway, I could just go on and on about how they involve people from all walks of life and all different kinds of restaurants. Okay, so, and it's all, I should say, it's all based on an app. So it's just like what you would do anyway if you're in the modern, takeout world, you'd order what you want, but the price is really low and people are quite excited to get all this good food, fresh and cheap. Okay, and I will make this slideshow available to you all if you want it. I'll make it into a PDF and you can just read this stuff. And the last thing I want to mention is that a lot of the really creative and leading models in Denmark have come from local communities, small groups of people, and some of the municipalities. And the Danish municipalities are really working hard to keep providing some of that leadership and to be creative innovation hubs. And so I think it would be really interesting for us to explore how we might identify a few municipalities in different parts of the state and explore how we might, through our own colleagues and the members of Climate Reality, share all the best models that we think might work here in Minnesota. Well, you all listened to quite a lot. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Does anybody have comments or questions for Tina? Oh, it looks like Debbie does.
I do. First of all, Tina, amazing presentation. I had a plan to go to Denmark and Sweden right before COVID, and then that hit, and that went out. But I love what I see that the community is so proud of what they're doing. I don't know if everybody feels that way there, but it just seems like maybe the smaller, more homogeneous society is willing to be that way. I'm not sure. But what I want to talk about is, you were talking about the biking, and it's so fascinating. And I was in Amsterdam, and of course I saw all what was going on there. They're throwing bikes in the rivers and in the canals, and then I was just in Paris, and they're trying to do this. They're trying to do this, make Paris a biking city, and it's crazy because they've got all these buses and traffic, and people are going through on their bikes, and it's just crazy. And so when I see what they're doing in Denmark, where they're breaking it up, that makes a lot more sense to me. It seems more, it just seems safer. Let's put it that way. But what I wanted to say is that Bike Min is an advocacy organization in Minnesota. And there is a day at the Capitol for biking and smart biking. And I think it would really be nice to go and make some noise for that, and bring up the Danish model maybe, and say, it didn't start out this way. We had to make a concentrated effort to have this happen. And now look at how proud and healthy our people are. So anyway, sorry to talk too much.
No, that's great. That's great.
I have a question. Hey, first of all, Tina, so good to see you. We're sort of neighbors, and she's supposed to be on our environment committee. I'm just giving her a hard time. Tina, so thinking about what you saw in Denmark and what it's like in Minnesota, where do you see the most opportunity for trying to get that momentum going here? Like if you like, and I'm just thinking, wish big, no limitations. Like, do you see it when you say municipalities? Do you mean like neighborhoods, small towns, churches, everything? Or like, is there anything where you really see potential for getting more movement here?
Well, we should there's a bunch of things to come to mind, but initially, I think the most effective thing that all of us can do right now in any communication that we have with anyone, that where there's an opening for us to say something, is to talk about the quality of life, financial, health, benefits of our favorite methods for reducing fossil fuel use. And I don't even talk with about climate issues with most. I test a bit, but I just talk about my solar panels, how much money I make off of them, how I power my car for pennies a mile, my electric vehicle, how I'm looking forward to the day where I can get a bi-directional charger and be able to store power, so that if the power ever went out, I'd be one less person needing help from the grid, and maybe my neighbors could come to my house. I mean, I talk about all kinds of security and economic and health benefits, and only if someone then, I just think we need to sell the solutions on their own merits, and we can do that now that we couldn't 20 years ago. I have a whole bunch of neighbors. I have 10 neighbors now in Como Park that have put solar on, and one of them is a climate denier of the first order. But his partner heard how much money, and she really liked. And I'll get my incentive from All Energy Solar, and I give it to people. I take out what I have to pay in taxes, and I give them the cash. I mean, I just say, look, it's in my interest that more of us, because eventually we're going to need a microgrid. We're going to need the grid resiliency because the power lines will come down. In Denmark, they've buried all of their electric power lines. They're a windy country. So, we're just sitting ducks. And so I just look for opportunities to talk about security and money making and
Okay, great.
And pride in ownership. The fact, like I own my own power. It's a great phrase, but I just say, I tell my neighbors and other people, I own my house, I own my car. Why not own my power? My own power supply.
We probably have time for 2 or 3 more. I see Julie's hand is up.
Hi, Dina. I'm wondering if you could, I'm thinking too, that it's such a success is a lot about the urban planning too, in terms of the density and the way people are willing and able to live, and the landscape is pretty flat. That's the beauty. They probably have they have systems, they have a world in place that's really supporting that, which is, if you could talk a little bit about that from living there.
Yes. I took out all my urban planning slides. I had all this stuff because that's what I spent a lot of time learning about. And but I figured to put you all to sleep. But actually, it's really, really fascinating how they go about their urban planning. And I did have a picture in there of a snowplow on one of the bicycle super highways, and I took it out because by the time I left, I remember in 2020, they hadn't had much snow for 2 winters in a row, and I checked back, and they still haven't had much snow to speak of, so they haven't had to pull out their plows. So they, but the comment to me was, well, it's getting warmer, so I guess we won't have our famous, Copenhagen snow bicycling, because people would bicycle even through then. I do, obviously, it's every area. Portland is an interesting example of a more hilly city where bicycling is huge. I just think it's extending the season like we do with agriculture around here. And the more that we do the right thing and make it easy for people and safe, that the Danes expect their government to make it easy for them to be good sustainability people. They demand that of their government. And I think one of the things we can do, to get back to Mary's question, is we can be supporting our government in our local communities. to do all the right things, because they're going to get beaten up more now than ever. The oil industry is launching attacks on our own rail line system, right? It's amazing. The Heartland Institute has at least one full-time senior staff person out giving talks about why it's so terrible to have public transportation. So we can expect to see more of an attack on public transit. And I think the more we can do to support our municipalities to take leadership, the better.
Well, let's give Tina a great hand. It's really good.
Oh, sorry. I'm very enthusiastic and I'm kind of rusty, but if anybody wants to talk more and share your ideas and thoughts, I'd love to hear.